The sun had long since dipped below the horizon in a quiet corner of Austin, Texas, leaving behind that lingering, heavy scent of damp earth and fading charcoal grills that defines the southern summer. In this neighborhood, the mailboxes stood like silent silver sentries in perfect rows, and the only sound was the rhythmic whir of air conditioners fighting the humid night air. It was the kind of place where people moved to find peace, a sanctuary of suburban dreams and white picket fences. In a cozy two-story house at the end of the cul-de-sac, the Miller family was settling into the deep, heavy stillness of a Tuesday night. Jack, an electrical engineer who had spent the last 14 hours troubleshooting a power grid failure, had barely touched his dinner before his eyes began to heavy. He was a man of logic and blueprints, a man who believed in systems and safety protocols. Beside him, his wife Sarah, a freelance graphic designer, had finally closed her laptop after a grueling deadline. Their 5-year-old daughter, Lily, was already adrift in a world of dreams, her room upstairs decorated with glowing plastic stars that mimicked the vast Texas sky outside. But the true soul of the home remained awake. Buddy, a 7-year-old golden retriever with fur the color of toasted wheat and eyes that held the wisdom of 1,000 lifetimes, lay on his favorite rug at the base of the stairs. To most, Buddy was just a pet, a loyal companion who enjoyed belly rubs and chasing tennis balls. But to the Millers, he was the heartbeat of the household. Jack often joked that Buddy had emotional radar. He was the first to nudge Sarah's hand when she was stressed, and the first to rest his heavy head on Lily's lap when she scraped a knee. He was more than a dog. He was a silent guardian who took his job with a gravity that bordered on the sacred. Tonight, however, the air felt different. As the clock on the mantel ticked toward 2:14 a.m., the silence of the house began to shift into something sinister. It started as a microscopic tremor in the crawl space behind a vintage gas stove, a tiny hairline fracture in an old brass fitting that had finally succumbed to years of subtle vibrations. Out came the methane, silent and invisible, carrying with it the sharp synthetic stench of mercaptan, the sulfurous additive designed to scream danger to anyone with the senses to catch it. Buddy's head snapped up, his ears, soft and velvet-like, twitched toward the kitchen. He didn't hear a burglar, he didn't hear the wind, he heard the hiss of something that shouldn't be there. He stood up, his claws clicking softly on the hardwood, and approached the kitchen doorway. The air here was colder, heavier. The gas was creeping across the floor like a translucent tide, invisible to the human eye, but glowing like a warning beacon to Buddy's hypersensitive nose. Deep in the dog's chest, a low, guttural vibration began to grow. It wasn't a bark yet, it was a question. He paced the perimeter of the kitchen, his tail tucked low, his body tensing with a primal realization. The den was being poisoned. Buddy took the stairs 2 at a time, his breathing becoming ragged as the gas began to thin the oxygen in the hallway. He reached the master bedroom door and pushed it open with his snout. Inside, the rhythmic breathing of Jack and Sarah was too slow, too deep. The carbon monoxide and methane mix was already weaving a heavy, lethal curtain around their consciousness. Buddy whined. He nudged Jack's limp hand, which hung off the side of the bed. No response. He licked Sarah's face, his tongue dry from the fumes. She merely turned her head, lost in a chemically induced lethargy. Realizing that his usual gentle tactics were failing, Buddy's demeanor shifted. The good boy vanished, replaced by a desperate ancestral force. He lunged onto the king-sized bed, his weight shifting the mattress violently. He grabbed the corner of the heavy down comforter in his powerful jaws and ripped it backward with a violent jerk, exposing his owners to the chilling draft of the AC. Then he let out a bark so sharp, so jagged, that it sounded like a gunshot in the confined space. Jack groaned, his head throbbing as if a spike had been driven through his temples. "Buddy, no, down, boy," he muttered, his voice thick and slurred. He felt as though he were swimming through molasses. His brain, deprived of clean air, struggled to process why his normally calm dog was behaving like a wild animal. But Buddy didn't stop. He nipped at Jack's shoulder, not enough to break the skin,
but enough to spark a jolt of adrenaline. He grabbed the fabric of Jack's pajama sleeve and began to physically haul him toward the edge of the bed. "Jack, what's happening?" Sarah's voice was a whisper, barely audible. She tried to sit up, but the room spun in nauseating circles. "I don't know," Jack gasped, finally sitting up. As he took a deep breath, the stench hit him. It wasn't just a faint whiff, it was an overwhelming, nauseating wall of rotten eggs. His engineering brain clicked into high gear, bypassing the fog of sleep. "Gas," Jack rasped, his eyes widening in the dark. "Sarah, get up. Don't touch the lights. Don't flip a single switch." He knew the physics. A single spark from a light switch, a static pop from a rug, or the cycling of the refrigerator compressor could turn the house into a pressure cooker of fire and flying glass. "Lily!" Sarah screamed, the terror finally piercing through her drowsiness. They scrambled toward the nursery. Lily was pale, her breathing shallow. Jack scooped her up, wrapping her in her favorite pink blanket. The air on the second floor was bad, but as they descended the stairs, it became unbearable. It felt like walking into a thick, invisible swamp. Buddy was leading the way, his tail no longer wagging, his body low to the ground where the air was marginally clearer. He was coughing now, a dry, hacking sound that tore at Sarah's heart. "The back door! Go!" Jack commanded, pointing toward the kitchen. They reached the heavy oak door that led to the patio. Sarah grabbed the handle and twisted. It wouldn't budge. She threw her shoulder against it, sobbing with effort. The record-breaking Texas humidity of the past week had caused the wooden frame to swell, and the deadbolt, misaligned by the shift, was jammed tight. "It's stuck, Jack! It won't open!" The panic was a physical weight now. They were trapped in a box that was filling with an explosive fog. Jack joined her, pulling with such force that the metal handle bit into his palms, but the wood held fast. The heat, the smell, and a lack of oxygen were beginning to claim them. Lily began to cry, a weak, frightened sound that fueled Jack's desperation. Buddy saw the struggle. He looked at the jammed door, then at the massive, fixed-pane picture window that overlooked the garden. It was thick, double-paned glass, never meant to be opened. Buddy didn't hesitate. He began to bark at the glass, jumping against the wall, his claws scratching at the paint. "Buddy, get back!" Jack yelled, reaching for a heavy brass floor lamp that stood in the corner. It was an heirloom, solid and weighted with a marble base. "Sarah, cover Lily's eyes." Jack swung the lamp like a sledgehammer. The first impact resulted in a dull thud and a hairline crack. The second impact sent a vibration up Jack's arms that felt like it would shatter his bones. On the third swing, the window gave way. The sound was cataclysmic, a symphony of shattering crystal that sliced through the suburban silence. And then, the miracle, the rush of the night air. It hit them like a physical wave, cool and sweet and life-giving. Jack hoisted Lily through the jagged frame, handing her to Sarah, who scrambled out onto the dew-covered grass. They were safe. They were out. But as Jack climbed through, he realized Buddy wasn't behind him. "Buddy, come!" Jack roared, his voice hoarse from the fumes. The dog was standing near the center of the living room, his body tensed.
He let out one more urgent bark, then turned and vanished back into the dark, gas-filled depths of the house. "Jack! He's going back in! Buddy, no!" Sarah shrieked from the lawn, clutching Lily to her chest. Jack was about to dive back through the broken window, glass shards be damned, when he noticed a flicker of movement next door. Old Mr. Harris, a 78-year-old veteran and lifelong insomniac, had been startled by the sound of the window breaking. He was standing on his porch just 30 feet away, a cigarette between his lips. His thumb was hovering over the flint wheel of a silver Zippo. "Mr. Harris, stop! Don't light it!" Jack's scream was a raw, primal plea that echoed off the neighboring houses. The old man froze, the lighter inches from his face. "Jack, what's the hollering about?" "Gas! There's a leak! Get back! Get away from the house!" In that heartbeat of suspended animation,
A golden blur erupted from the broken window. Buddy sailed through the air, landing awkwardly on the grass and rolling twice before coming to a stop. He was gasping, his chest heaving, his fur coated in a fine layer of drywall dust. In his mouth, gripped with a tenderness that defied the chaos of the moment, was Lily's tattered stuffed bear, the moon bear she had slept with every night since she was an infant. In the midst of a life-and-death struggle, the dog had realized his little human was missing her most important comfort. They didn't wait for the explosion that never came. They ran to the middle of the street, huddled together, as the first distant wail of sirens began to tear through the night. 10 minutes later, the cul-de-sac was a sea of pulsating red and blue. Firefighters in heavy tan turnouts moved with practiced precision, shutting off the main gas line and venting the structure with high-powered fans. The fire captain, a grizzled man named Miller, no relation, approached Jack with a handheld sensor. He looked at the digital readout, then back at the house, then at the family sitting on the curb wrapped in shock blankets. "You're a lucky man, Mr. Miller," the captain said, his voice low. The LEL, lower explosive limit, inside that kitchen was off the charts. If your water heater had kicked on, or if your neighbor had struck that lighter 5 seconds earlier, well, we wouldn't be having this conversation. There wouldn't be enough left of this house to fill a shoebox. How did you know to get out? Jack leaned back, resting his hand on Buddy. The dog was exhausted, his eyes half closed, but his tail gave a singular rhythmic thump against the asphalt. "I didn't know. He did. He wouldn't let us die. He dragged us out of our own graves." The aftermath was a whirlwind. The story of the miracle retriever of Austin went viral. Local news crews lined the street. The county sheriff presented Buddy with a custom-engraved gold tag that read, "Extraordinary Valor." But for the Millers, the fame was white noise. The real moment happened a week later, after the pipes were replaced and the glass was restored. They were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset. Lily was sitting on the grass, reading a book to Buddy, who lay with his chin on her feet, his eyes watching the perimeter of the yard. Jack looked at his wife and realized that their life was divided into 2 eras, before the leak and after the leak. "You know, Sarah," Jack said, his voice thick with emotion, "we always talk about saving animals from shelters. We give them a bed, some kibble, and a roof. We think we're the heroes." He paused, watching Buddy's ears twitch at the sound of a distant car. "But the truth is, they're the ones saving us, every single day. They save us from loneliness, they save us from our own stress, and sometimes, when the world tries to go up in flames, they save us from the dark." Buddy looked up then as if he understood every word. He didn't look like a hero, he just looked like a friend who was glad his pack was whole. He rested his head back down, closed his eyes, and finally, for the first time since that terrible night, he let himself fall into a deep, peaceful sleep.